David had always been the kind of person who could sleep through anything. His friends used to joke that he could fall asleep during a thunderstorm and wake up 8 hours later completely refreshed, but that was before everything changed on that strange Tuesday night in October. It was 2:47 a.m. when David's eyes suddenly shot open. His heart was racing like he'd just run a marathon, but he couldn't understand why. He sat up in bed, looking around his quiet apartment. Everything seemed normal. The street lights outside cast their usual shadows on the wall. His alarm clock glowed softly in the darkness. Nothing was out of place. But then he heard it, a voice. Soft and gentle like a whisper carried on the wind. "David," it called. He jumped up and checked his front door. Locked. He looked out the window. The street below was empty except for a few parked cars. His neighbors' windows were all dark. "Hello," he called out softly, feeling a bit foolish. Silence. Maybe he'd been dreaming. Though it felt so real. He went back to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he kept expecting to hear that voice again. The next morning, David convinced himself it had just been a weird dream. He went to work at the tech company where he wrote computer programs, grabbed his usual coffee, and tried to focus on his projects. But throughout the day, he couldn't shake the memory of that voice calling his name. 3 nights later, it happened again. This time, David was wide awake, reading a book in bed. The voice came through clear as day, though it seemed to come from inside his head rather than through his ears. "I hope you're not scared," the voice said. It was definitely a woman's voice, warm and caring. "I don't understand what's happening either." David dropped his book. His hands were shaking. "Who are you?" he whispered into the darkness of his room. For a moment, there was silence. Then the voice came back, sounding almost surprised. "You can hear me? I mean, really hear me?" "I can hear you," David replied, still not sure if he was losing his mind. "But where are you? How are you doing this?" "My name is Lisa," the voice said. And David could somehow sense that she was smiling, even though he couldn't see her. "I'm somewhere across the city. I know this sounds crazy, but I think I'm talking to you with my thoughts." Over the following weeks, the conversations became a regular part of David's nights. Lisa would reach out to him sometime between midnight and dawn, and they would talk for hours. Well, it wasn't exactly talking. It was more like thoughts flowing back and forth between their minds. Lisa told him about her life. She worked at an art gallery downtown and loved old books and vintage movies. She had grown up with her grandmother, who used to tell stories about people in their family who had special gifts. Lisa had never believed those stories until now. What amazed David the most was how much Lisa seemed to know about him. She mentioned the small scar on his shoulder from when he fell off his bike as a kid. She knew about his habit of always drinking his coffee at exactly 3 in the afternoon. She even knew that he hummed softly to himself when he was working on difficult computer problems. "How do you know all this about me?" David asked during one of their late-night conversations. "I don't know," Lisa replied, and he could sense her confusion. "When I focus on you, these images just come into my mind. I can see your apartment, your daily routine. It's like watching a movie, but the movie is your life." David should have been scared. Any normal person would have been terrified to discover that a stranger could somehow peek into their thoughts and memories. But instead, he found himself looking forward to bedtime each night. Lisa's presence in his mind was comforting, like having a close friend who understood him completely. The problem was that David wasn't getting any sleep. He would lie awake for hours, talking with Lisa in his mind. When morning came, he was exhausted. His work started suffering. He made mistakes in his computer programs that he never would have made before. His coworkers asked if he was feeling okay. His boss suggested he take a few days off. But David couldn't take time off from Lisa. Even when he tried to go to bed early and ignore her voice, she would still be there, sharing little thoughts and observations about her day. She would tell him about interesting people who visited the art gallery, or describe a beautiful sunset she saw on her way home from work. "I think I'm becoming addicted to this," David admitted to Lisa one night. "I can't sleep. I can't focus at work, but I don't want these conversations to stop. I know exactly what you mean, Lisa replied. I've been tired all day, every day, but when night comes, all I want to do is talk with you. It's like you've become the most important part of my day. And I don't even know what you look like. That comment stuck with David. Here he was, having the most meaningful conversations of his life with someone he'd never met. He knew Lisa's thoughts, her dreams, her fears, and her hopes better than he knew those of his closest friends. Yet he had no idea what color her eyes were or how tall she was. Maybe we should meet, David suggested carefully. He didn't want to scare Lisa away, but the curiosity was driving him crazy. There was a long pause before Lisa responded. I've been thinking the same thing, she finally said. But what if meeting in person ruins this? What if the magic only works when we're apart? Or what if it gets even stronger? David countered. Another pause. Then Lisa's mental voice came through with a mix of excitement and nervousness. There's an art exhibition opening at my gallery this Saturday evening. If you really want to meet me, I'll be there setting up displays and serving drinks to guests. David's heart started racing. After weeks of mysterious midnight conversations, he was finally going to meet the woman who had turned his entire world upside down. But as excited as he was, a part of him was terrified. What if Lisa was nothing like he imagined? What if their connection was all in his head? What if he was actually having some kind of mental breakdown? I'll be there, David promised. But Lisa, what if this is all just in my imagination? What if I show up and you have no idea who I am? Then we'll know for sure that one of us is going crazy. Lisa replied with what David somehow knew was a gentle laugh. But David, I don't think we're imagining this. What we have is too real, too detailed, too consistent. Saturday night, we'll find out for certain. The rest of that week crawled by. David could barely concentrate on anything. Lisa seemed just as distracted, often starting sentences in their mental conversations and then trailing off, lost in thought. They were both nervous about what Saturday would bring. Friday night. Lisa's voice seemed different somehow, softer, more vulnerable. David, she said, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that these past few weeks have been the most amazing of my life. You've made me feel less alone in the world. You've done the same for me. David replied, tomorrow can't come soon enough. Saturday morning arrived, and David woke up feeling like his stomach was full of butterflies. He had barely slept the night before, not because of Lisa's telepathic visits, but because he was too nervous about finally meeting her. What if she took one look at him and decided he wasn't what she expected? What if their amazing mental connection didn't translate to real life? David spent way too much time picking out clothes. He changed his shirt 3 times before settling on a simple blue button-down that his sister had once said made his eyes look nice. He showered, brushed his teeth twice, and even used some cologne he'd been saving for special occasions. The art gallery wasn't supposed to open until 6 in the evening, but David found himself walking around the neighborhood at 3 in the afternoon. He was too restless to stay home, and he wanted to get familiar with the area. The Morrison Gallery was located on a busy street downtown, surrounded by coffee shops and small boutiques. David ducked into a coffee shop across the street and ordered a large coffee. Even though his hands were already shaking from nerves, he sat by the window where he could see the gallery entrance. A few people in fancy clothes were already going in and out, probably setting up for the evening event. David, Lisa's voice suddenly appeared in his mind. Are you nervous? Because I'm absolutely terrified. He nearly spilled his coffee. Even though they'd been talking like this for weeks, it still caught him off guard sometimes. I'm sitting in a coffee shop across from your gallery, David replied mentally. I've been here for an hour already because I couldn't sit still at home. Really? Which coffee shop? Lisa asked, and David could sense her excitement mixed with panic. The one called Bean there, right across the street from you. There was a pause, then Lisa said, oh my goodness, I can see that place from the gallery window. You're so close right now. This is so weird and wonderful and scary all at the same time. David looked across the street at the gallery windows, wondering if Lisa was looking back at him right now. "Can you see me?" he asked. "There are too many people walking around, and the windows are a bit tinted," Lisa replied. "But knowing you're right there is making my heart beat so fast. I think my coworkers are going to ask if I'm okay." For the next 2 hours, David and Lisa kept up a running mental conversation while he sat in the coffee shop and she worked inside the gallery. She told him about the paintings they were hanging for the exhibition. He described the interesting people he was watching walk by outside. It was like having a friend right next to him, even though they were separated by a busy street into buildings. The strangest thing happened earlier. Lisa mentioned during one of their mental chats. "My boss asked me to describe the new paintings to him for the catalog, and I kept using phrases that sounded like things you would say. It's like your way of seeing things is mixing with mine." David knew exactly what she meant. Over the past few weeks, he'd started noticing things he never paid attention to before, like the way afternoon light hit buildings or how people's faces showed their emotions. He was pretty sure these were things Lisa had been teaching him to see through their connection. As 6 o'clock approached, David's nervousness reached a whole new level. He finished 3 cups of coffee and was practically vibrating with caffeine and anxiety. People in dressy clothes were starting to gather outside the gallery entrance. "Okay," Lisa said in his mind, "people are starting to arrive for the exhibition. I'm wearing a black dress with small white flowers on it, and I'll be near the back of the gallery by the wine table. I have dark hair that goes down to my shoulders. I'm wearing a blue shirt and dark jeans," David replied. "I have brown hair, and I'm probably going to look really nervous. We're both going to look nervous," Lisa said with a mental laugh. "David, what if this changes everything between us? What if it makes everything even better?" David suggested, though he was wondering the same thing. David paid for his coffee and walked slowly across the street. His legs felt like jelly, and his palms were sweating despite the cool October evening. The gallery entrance had a small crowd of people chatting and laughing. Everyone looked sophisticated and artsy, making David worry that he was underdressed. He took a deep breath and walked inside. The gallery was bigger than it looked from outside, with white walls covered in colorful paintings and sculptures placed throughout the space. Soft music played in the background, and people moved around slowly, looking at the artwork and sipping wine from plastic cups. David's eyes immediately started scanning the room for someone who matched Lisa's description. He saw several women with dark hair, but none of them felt right. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure other people could hear it. "I'm inside," he told Lisa mentally. "This place is packed. Where exactly are you?" "I'm by the wine table in the back corner," Lisa replied. "I just saw someone walking wearing a blue shirt. Is that you?" David looked toward the back of the gallery and saw a wine table set up near the far wall. There were a few people gathered around it, including a woman with shoulder-length dark hair wearing a black dress with tiny white flowers. She was arranging wine glasses on the table, but she kept looking up and scanning the crowd. "I think I see you," David said mentally. "You're fixing the wine glasses, aren't you?" The woman suddenly went very still. She turned and looked directly across the room, her eyes searching until they found David standing near the entrance. For a moment, neither of them moved. It was like the entire gallery full of people just disappeared, and there were only the two of them, staring at each other. Across the crowded room, David felt something he'd never experienced before. It was like recognition, but deeper than that. It was like his mind was saying, "Oh, there you are. I've been looking for you my whole life, Lisa," he said out loud, even though he was still too far away for her to hear him over the crowd and music. But somehow, she did hear him, or maybe she heard his thoughts. She nodded and started walking toward him, weaving between the other gallery visitors. David began moving toward her too, his nervousness replaced by an overwhelming sense of rightness. They met in the middle of the gallery, right in front of a large painting of a sunset, up close. David could see that Lisa had the kindest brown eyes he'd ever seen, and there was something familiar about her face, like he'd seen it in dreams he couldn't quite remember. "Hi," Lisa said softly, and her voice out loud was exactly the same as her voice in his mind. "Hi," David replied, and then they both started laughing because they realized they were both shaking. "This is so weird," Lisa said. "I feel like I know you completely, but also like I'm meeting you for the first time. I know exactly what you mean." David said, "It's like meeting your best friend and a stranger all at once." They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, both amazed that the person they'd been talking to every night was real, and standing right in front of them, around them. The gallery exhibition continued, but David and Lisa were in their own little world. "So," Lisa said with a smile, "what do we do now?" Standing there in the middle of the art gallery, David and Lisa found themselves in the most awkward and wonderful moment of their lives. They had spent weeks sharing their deepest thoughts, but now they didn't know whether to shake hands, hug, or just keep staring at each other in amazement. "I can't believe you're real," Lisa whispered, and David noticed that her cheeks were turning pink. "I mean, I knew you were real, but seeing you here, in person, it's just incredible." David nodded, feeling equally stunned. "You look exactly like I somehow imagined you would, but also completely different. Does that make any sense?" "Perfect sense," Lisa replied with a nervous laugh. "It's like my mind knew what you looked like, but my eyes are seeing you for the first time." Around them, other gallery visitors were starting to stare. David realized they were probably looking pretty strange, just standing there gazing at each other like they'd discovered something magical, which, he supposed, they had. "Should we, maybe step outside for a minute?" David suggested. "I feel like everyone is watching us." Lisa glanced around and noticed the curious looks too. "Good idea, but I should probably tell my boss first. I'm supposed to be working tonight." She led David over to a tall man in an expensive-looking suit who was talking to a group of people near one of the larger paintings. "Hey, Robert," Lisa said, interrupting politely. "I need to step outside for just a few minutes. Is that okay?" Robert looked at David with raised eyebrows. "Sure, but don't be gone too long. We're expecting more people to arrive soon. I promise." "I'll be right back," Lisa said, then grabbed David's hand. The moment their skin touched, something electric seemed to pass between them. Both of them gasped softly. "Did you feel that?" Lisa asked quietly as they walked toward the gallery entrance. "Like a little shock, but warm instead of painful," David replied. "Is that normal?" "Nothing about this situation is normal," Lisa said with a smile that made David's heart skip a beat. They stepped outside into the cool evening air. The street was busy with people walking to dinner or heading home from work, but David and Lisa found a quiet spot beside the gallery entrance where they could talk without being overheard. "Okay," Lisa said, turning to face him. "I have about 1,000,000 questions, and I don't know where to start." "Me too," David said. "Like, how is this even possible? How can two people who have never met before suddenly start talking to each other?" With their minds, Lisa leaned against the brick wall of the gallery building. "My grandmother used to tell stories about people in our family who had special abilities. I always thought they were just fairy tales she made up to entertain me. But now," she trailed off, looking thoughtful. "Now you're thinking maybe they weren't just stories," David finished. "Exactly. What about your family? Has anything like this ever happened to anyone you know?" David shook his head. "Not that I know of. My parents are pretty ordinary people. My dad sells insurance, and my mom is a school teacher. The most supernatural thing that's ever happened in my family is when my uncle claimed he saw a ghost in his basement, but that was probably just the old furnace making noises." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both trying to process the impossibility of their situation. David found himself studying Lisa's face, memorizing the way her eyes crinkled slightly when she smiled, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. "Can I ask you something that might sound weird?" Lisa said suddenly. "After everything that's happened, I don't think anything could sound weird anymore," David replied. "When we were talking in our minds just now, while we were both inside the gallery, it felt different, stronger, like the connection was clearer or something." David nodded immediately. "I noticed that too. It was like the volume got turned up. And now that we're standing here together, I can almost feel your thoughts even when you're not trying to send them to me. Really? What am I thinking right now? Lisa asked with a playful smile. David closed his eyes and tried to focus. After a moment, he opened them again, looking surprised. You're thinking about how strange it is that you feel comfortable with me, even though we just met. And you're also thinking about whether your boss is getting annoyed, that you're not inside helping with the wine. Lisa's mouth dropped open. That's exactly what I was thinking. How did you do that? I have no idea, David admitted. It just sort of came to me. Try it with me. Lisa looked at David intently. Her forehead wrinkled in concentration. After a few seconds, she said, You're thinking about how this is the most amazing and confusing night of your life. And you're also worried that when I go back inside, this feeling might disappear. That's exactly right, David said, amazed. Lisa, I think being near each other is making whatever this is even stronger. That's exciting and terrifying at the same time, Lisa said. What if it gets so strong that we can't control it? What if we start hearing everyone's thoughts? David hadn't considered that possibility, and it made him feel a little nervous. Let's hope it only works between us, he said. I don't think I want to know what random strangers are thinking about. Lisa laughed, and the sound made David feel warm all over. You're probably right. Most people's thoughts are probably pretty boring anyway. Not yours, David said without thinking, then felt his face turn red. I mean, your thoughts are interesting. That's why I've been looking forward to our conversations every night. Thank you, Lisa said softly. Yours are interesting too. You see the world in such a unique way. You've taught me to notice things I never paid attention to before. They looked at each other for a moment, and David felt that same electric connection he'd experienced when they first touched hands. It was like they were communicating on a level deeper than words, sharing feelings and understanding that didn't need to be spoken. I should probably go back inside, Lisa said reluctantly. Robert is going to wonder where I disappeared to. Of course, David said, though he really didn't want her to leave. Will you be able to take a break later? Maybe we could go get some coffee or something? I'd love that, Lisa replied. The exhibition should wind down around 9 o'clock. Could you wait that long? I'll wait as long as you need, David said, and he meant it completely. Lisa smiled and reached out to squeeze his hand again. That warm electric feeling passed between them, but this time neither of them seemed surprised by it. David, Lisa said, still holding his hand, I know this is all really strange and new, but I want you to know that meeting you tonight feels like the most important thing that's ever happened to me. I feel exactly the same way, David replied, like everything in my life has been leading up to this moment. Lisa gave his hand one more squeeze, then reluctantly let go. I'll see you in a few hours, she said, then headed back toward the gallery entrance. David watched her go, feeling like the luckiest person in the world. Whatever was happening between them was beyond anything he'd ever imagined possible. As he stood there on the sidewalk, watching Lisa disappear back into the gallery, he realized that his life had just changed forever, and he couldn't wait to see what happened next. David spent the next 3 hours walking around downtown, trying to kill time until Lisa finished work at the gallery. He couldn't focus on anything except the amazing conversation they'd had outside. Every few minutes, he would catch himself smiling like an idiot at nothing in particular. Around 8:30, he positioned himself back at the coffee shop across from the gallery. Through the windows, he could see the crowd inside was getting smaller. People were starting to leave, carrying small bags with what looked like art catalogs inside. David, Lisa's voice appeared in his mind, clearer than it had ever been before. Are you still waiting for me? I'm right across the street, he replied mentally. How much longer do you think you'll be? Maybe 20 more minutes. We're cleaning up now. I can't wait to get out of here and talk to you properly. David could sense something different in Lisa's mental voice. There was excitement, but also a hint of worry. Is everything okay? He asked. Well, something strange happened after you left. Lisa replied, actually, several strange things happened. David felt his stomach tighten. What do you mean? I'll tell you when I see you. But David, I think our connection is getting stronger, and I'm not sure if that's good or bad." 25 minutes later, Lisa emerged from the gallery looking tired but beautiful. She had changed out of her black dress into jeans and a comfortable sweater. When she saw David waiting for her, her face lit up with a smile that made his heart race. "Finally," she said as she walked up to him. "That felt like the longest work shift of my life." "You said something strange happened," David said immediately. "What was it?" Lisa looked around at the busy street. "Let's go somewhere quieter first. I know a little coffee shop a few blocks away that stays open late." They walked side by side through the downtown streets. David noticed that every time their hands accidentally brushed while they walked, that same warm electric feeling would pass between them. He also noticed that he seemed to know which direction Lisa was planning to turn. Before she actually turned, "Here we are," Lisa said, stopping in front of a small coffee shop called the Night Owl. Through the windows, David could see it was nearly empty except for a few people sitting alone with laptops. They ordered their drinks and found a quiet table in the back corner. Lisa wrapped her hands around her coffee mug and looked at David with an expression that was part excitement and part concern. "Okay," she said. "So after you left tonight, I went back inside to help clean up. But I kept getting distracted because I could feel your presence, even though you were blocks away. It was like a warm spot in the back of my mind that told me exactly where you were." David nodded. "I felt the same thing. Even when I was walking around downtown, I always knew which direction the gallery was in. It was like having an internal compass that pointed to you instead of north." "But that's not the strange part," Lisa continued. "About an hour after you left, I was washing wine glasses in the back room when I suddenly got this wave of sadness. That didn't belong to me. It was so strong it almost knocked me over." David's eyes widened. "What time was that?" "Around 7:30. Exactly around 7:30. "Why?" "Because that's when I walked past this old bookstore that was closing down," David said slowly. "There was a sign in the window that said they were going out of business after 40 years. It made me really sad thinking about all the people who loved that place." Lisa stared at him. "David, I felt your sadness about a bookstore I've never even seen. I was standing in a gallery storage room, and suddenly I was overwhelmed with grief about the end of something beautiful and important." They sat in silence for a moment, both trying to process what this meant. "There's more," Lisa said quietly. "Around 8 o'clock, I got this sudden craving for chocolate ice cream. Not just wanting it, but needing it so badly I almost asked my boss if I could leave early to go buy some." David started laughing despite the seriousness of their conversation. "I stopped at that ice cream place on 5th Street at 8 o'clock and bought a chocolate cone. I was thinking about how I wish you were there to share it with me. This is getting scary," Lisa said, but she was smiling too. "We're not just talking to each other with our minds anymore. We're sharing feelings and experiences in real time. Is that a bad thing?" David asked. Lisa considered the question carefully. "I don't know. It's incredible, but also overwhelming. What happens if this keeps getting stronger? What if we lose the ability to have private thoughts?" David reached across the table and took her hand. The moment they touched, he felt a rush of warmth and connection that was even stronger than before. But along with Lisa's feelings, he could also sense her worries and fears. "We'll figure it out together," he said. "Whatever this is, whatever it becomes. We don't have to deal with it alone." Lisa squeezed his hand. "David, there's something else I need to tell you. When I got home tonight, I called my aunt in Romania. She's my grandmother's daughter, and she knows all the old family stories." "What did she say?" "She said that according to family legend, this kind of connection only happens between people who are meant to be together for life. She called it soul bonding. She said once it starts, it never stops, and it only gets deeper over time." David felt his pulse quicken. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means that what's happening to us isn't just some random psychic phenomenon," Lisa said. "According to my aunt, it means we're soulmates in the most literal sense possible. Our souls have somehow learned to communicate directly with each other." David looked into Lisa's eyes and felt that familiar sense of recognition, like he was looking at someone he'd known his entire life. "How do you feel about that?" he asked softly. "Honestly, terrified and thrilled at the same time," Lisa replied. "I've known you for less than 12 hours in person, but I feel closer to you than I've ever felt to anyone in my life. That should be impossible, but here we are." "I know exactly what you mean," David said. "This morning I was just a regular guy who wrote computer programs and lived alone in a quiet apartment. Tonight I'm sitting here holding hands with someone who might be my soulmate, and it feels like the most natural thing in the world." They sat there for a while, just looking at each other and marveling at the impossibility of their situation around them. The coffee shop was getting ready to close, but neither of them wanted the evening to end. "Lisa," David said finally, "I know this is all happening really fast, and I know it's strange and maybe a little frightening, but I want you to know that whatever comes next, I'm all in. This connection we have, it's the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me. I feel the same way," Lisa replied. "David, I think I'm falling in love with you, and that should be crazy after one day." "But somehow it's not. It's not crazy," David said, lifting her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. "It's magic." 2 years had passed since that magical night when David and Lisa first met at the art gallery. Their telepathic connection had indeed grown stronger over time, but they had learned to manage it in ways that brought them closer together rather than overwhelming them. They were now living together in a cozy apartment near downtown, close enough to Lisa's gallery job that she could walk to work. David had started working from home as a freelance programmer, which gave him the flexibility to be near Lisa when their connection felt particularly strong. On this particular morning, David woke up not to an alarm clock, but to Lisa's gentle mental whisper pulling him from sleep. "Good morning, sleepyhead," her voice said in his mind, even though she was already in the kitchen making coffee. "Good morning, beautiful," he replied mentally, stretching and smiling. Even after 2 years, waking up to Lisa's telepathic good morning wishes never got old. David found Lisa in the kitchen, humming softly while she prepared their breakfast. She turned and smiled when she saw him, and without saying a word out loud, she sent him a wave of pure love and contentment through their mental connection. "I still can't believe this is real sometimes," David said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What, that we can read each other's minds, or that we're this happy?" Lisa asked, leaning back against him. "Both," David replied, kissing the top of her head, "especially the happy part." Over the past 2 years, they had learned to use their telepathic ability like a tool rather than letting it control them. They had developed what they called mental privacy settings, ways to dim their connection when they needed individual space or when they were dealing with work situations that required full concentration. They had also learned that their connection worked best when they were emotionally balanced and happy. During their few arguments, the telepathic link would become fuzzy and unclear, as if their minds were protecting them from sharing negative emotions too directly. "I have some news," Lisa said, turning in David's arms to face him. "Dr. Peterson called yesterday while you were at the grocery store." Dr. Jennifer Peterson was a neuroscientist at the local university who had been studying David and Lisa's connection for the past year. They had volunteered to be research subjects after reading about her working consciousness studies. "What did she say?" David asked, though he could already sense Lisa's excitement through their mental link. "She wants us to come in next week for some new tests, apparently. The brain scans they did last month showed something she's never seen before in any of her research." David felt a flutter of nervousness. "Is that good or bad?" "Good, I think," Lisa replied. She said, "Our brain waves synchronize in ways that shouldn't be possible. When we're concentrating on sending thoughts to each other, our brains literally start operating on the same frequency. So we're not crazy," David said with relief. "Definitely not crazy. Just unique." Lisa stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. She also said she wants to write a research paper about us. We'd be the first documented case of genuine telepathic communication between two people. David considered this. "Are you okay with that?" With other people knowing about us, Lisa had been thinking about the same thing. "I think so. Dr. Peterson promised to keep our real names private, and maybe if other people read about us, it will help them understand that these kinds of connections are possible. After breakfast, they settled into their usual morning routine. David set up his laptop at the kitchen table to work on a new project for a client, while Lisa got ready for her job at the gallery. Even when they were focused on different tasks, they maintained a low-level mental connection, like background music that made them both feel less alone. Round noon, David was deep in concentration, trying to solve a complicated programming problem, when he felt Lisa's mental voice reach out to him. "David, you have to see this," she said, and along with her words, she sent him an image through their connection. David saw through Lisa's eyes as she looked at a new painting that had just arrived at the gallery. It was a beautiful landscape, showing two trees growing side by side, their branches intertwined so closely that it was impossible to tell where one tree ended and the other began. "It's beautiful," David replied mentally. "It reminds me of us." "That's exactly what I thought," Lisa said. The artist called it two souls, one growth. That evening, after Lisa came home from work, they took their usual walk through the neighborhood. It was something they had started doing early in their relationship, a time when they could talk out loud and enjoy each other's company without the intensity of their mental connection. "I've been thinking about what Dr. Peterson said," Lisa mentioned as they walked past the park where they often sat on weekends, "about the research paper. About us being unique. David, what if there are other people out there like us? What if our story could help them understand what's happening to them?" David had wondered the same thing. "You mean other people who might be developing telepathic connections with someone they love?" "Exactly. Imagine how scared and confused they must feel, thinking they're losing their minds. If our research helps even one other couple understand that this is real and beautiful, not something to be afraid of, then I think we should definitely participate." They stopped walking and sat down on their favorite bench overlooking the small pond. In the center of the park, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that reminded David of the first night they met. "Lisa," David said, taking her hand, "can I tell you something that might sound sentimental? You can tell me anything," she replied, squeezing his fingers. "Before I met you, I used to think that the phrase 'to hearts beating as one' was just something people said in love songs. I never imagined it could be literally true." Lisa smiled and closed her eyes, focusing on their connection. After a moment, she said, "Our heartbeats are synchronized right now, aren't they?" David placed his free hand over his heart and concentrated. "They are. How is that even possible?" "I don't know, and I don't really care," Lisa said. "All I know is that whatever force in the universe brought us together, I'm grateful for it every single day." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset reflect on the pond, and feeling the gentle flow of thoughts and emotions passing between their minds. Other couples walked by, holding hands and talking, but David knew that none of them shared the kind of connection he had with Lisa. "David," Lisa said softly, "do you ever miss having private thoughts?" It was a question she had asked before, and David's answer was always the same: "Never. I love that you know me completely, inside and out. I love that I never have to explain how I'm feeling or what I'm thinking, because you already understand. I love that we're two separate people who somehow became one soul." "I love that too," Lisa said. "And I love that even though we share thoughts, we're still surprising each other all the time. Like yesterday, when you sent me that funny mental image of your boss as a grumpy penguin. I never would have thought of that," David laughed. "And I never would have noticed how the afternoon light makes patterns on the gallery wall. But now I see it through your eyes every day." As they walked home in the gathering darkness, David reflected on how much his life had changed since that first night, when he heard Lisa's voice in his mind. He had gone from being a lonely programmer who lived for work to being half of something magical and unprecedented. "You know what the best part is?" David said as they reached their apartment building. "What's that?" "I still get excited every night, knowing that I'll fall asleep hearing your thoughts and wake up to your voice in mine. After 2 years, it still feels like magic." Lisa stopped and turned to face him. her eyes shining with happiness. "David, I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. I love you too." David replied, and as he said it, he sent the feeling directly to her mind, letting her experience the depth of his love as if it were her own emotion. They stood there on the sidewalk, two people who had discovered that true love really could transcend the boundaries of individual consciousness, grateful for the impossible gift they had been given and excited to see what tomorrow would bring. 2. Their shared dreams.